For spending weeks on a painting versus hours on art making, I've spent the last 5 months of my life trying to answer this one question: how to become faster as an artist and still keep a good result. Welcome my art friends as I share with you my joy, and by joy I mean my mistakes, and my breakthroughs and successes of my art journey so far. You may have asked this question before as well. How do I become better and faster as an artist? You ask your instructor or your fellow artist friends, and most of the time you'll get the response of, just draw more. I was guilty of this as well. If someone ever asked me how to improve, the past response would have been, just do more art and it'll get faster. While this might be true to some degree, this answer always felt like a cop-out and a really slow way to do art for me. In the back of my mind, it always feels really stupid to receive this type of answer, because if you draw the same things and make the same mistakes over and over again, it'll just be just as slow as before. So how did I actually get faster then? Here's the breakthrough that worked for me only recently. After learning and researching tons of artists, working with their different styles, and seeing how they make their art pieces, I finally found the process that works for my personality was the key. I found that a workflow that lines up with my preferences and my personality was crucial to my art making becoming a lot faster. How you work was the answer. And every single artist that I was researching and also trying to find out how they approach art making, each one has some sort of system. And I would say most artists have some sort of method or workflow that makes their art to the standards that they want it to be. All artists has some sort of method to their madness. Each artist has to deal with line, shapes, value, texture, contrast, colors, and order them in a way that is comfortable for their artistic approaches. Within their process, it might be very different depending on the personality and how they feel towards the tools and the fundamentals that they know. Some artists might start with textures first, while other artists might start with contrast or color. For me, a classic workflow was to use lines to do thumbnails, draw to start, then values to block in, and then the colors to paint on top, and then towards the end, add the textures as the last and afterwards for the final. Some artists might cut some areas of the process because they know what works for them really well. For example, instead of working with lines to start, some might use shapes and values to speed up their process. So here's how I improved my workflow and art practice, and how you can figure out your workflow or process to look for areas that might slow you down or maximize your speed in art making. Considering these questions, what part of the creative process are you really strong at or your favorite within your art making? For me, my drawings and thumbnails and figuring out the ideas of the art piece that I was working on were some of my favorite things that I like to do. It comes easy for me when it comes to using shapes and values to be able to block in colors, and it goes really quick for me. On the other hand, where are your slowest or your weakest in terms of your creation or your process? What causes you to slow down in art making? And be honest, mine was when I try to refine from my thumbnails to the sketches and try to make the lines as refined as possible. This is where I slow down and I keep redoing over and over again these lines. And I have a hard time trying to figure out how to be able to add texture in after I figure out the value stage as well, especially when I'm trying to render and finalize the piece to the highest of the polishing. And then lastly, what are your personality like, especially with the preferences and your tools that you're using? For me, I am really lazy, especially when it comes to using layers, and also I don't really enjoy trying to find each layer, especially for later. Now, knowing this was the thing that ended up helping me to create faster artwork that cut my time by a ton. After figuring out my strengths and weaknesses, especially within my own process in art making, this is where I started tweaking and adjusting the things that I could improve on. For example, with my lines, I started considering using and worrying less about the most refined line quality and focusing more towards my shapes. Instead of saving my textures towards the end, I started and revised them, sneaking them into my middle of my process in hopes to be able to have them more unified later on. And also, I started to organize my layers and also make them fewer, so it'd be a lot more easy for me to be able to manage. In the end, this was the thing that worked out for me to make my art to become a lot faster and a lot more consistent within my process. For those of you, if all of your categories and fundamentals needs to be worked on, this is what I would consider. Focus on one thing that you're really good at and that you find most joy in doing, and focus on that first, and then slowly work towards the weaker areas that you need to be considering in terms of working on the fundamentals. Try not to focus on way too many things within the process, but instead focus on one thing at a time, build up that level, and this should be able to help you become even faster as an artist. While it took me about 5 months to figure this out, as to what works for me and to finally realize what might be able to help the process a lot smoother, I think anyone can increase their efficiency in their workflow to learn more and make even better artwork once they fit their personality and their preferences, especially their strengths in the art making. Hope this wasn't too much of a rant and was useful, and happy making to all of you. Until next time, peace out.